All right, so this Abel Sanchez interview is getting a lot of attention, obviously because of the wrong reasons, and rightfully so. Abel Sanchez decides to be honest, and I think he's always honest. And because he's always honest, people, at least some people, act shocked or act surprised because of his honesty. So Abel Sanchez, the trainer of Gennady Golovkin, aka Triple G, paints a broad stroke and says that black fighters, black boxers, have a particular style that isn't pleasing to fans, that is not aesthetically pleasing to fans. So I'm going to actually play this clip, and I have to play this clip to illustrate the points. I'm going to play several clips and illustrate some points that obviously they're going to prove him wrong. But I'm going to play these clips regardless of I get a strike or whatever. I have to do this so I can go ahead and demonstrate what I'm trying to say. But let me play this clip from Fight Hype. I'll come back with my commentary and then continue to add on regarding his comments. So here we go.
When you called him Floyd, I know it wasn't in a bad light, but some people can take that as a compliment. I'm sure you didn't mean it that way.
I meant it that our black fighters fight in a style that is not pleasing to the fans, let's just say, and that's why they don't sell. Some of the black fighters, I had a young man named Terry Norris, who I molded in a Mexican style. He was an attacker, he was a killer, he's gonna come and hurt you. Unfortunately, some of the fighters now is more of the street science. Fans don't want to see the street science, no matter what they say. Fans want to see somebody get hurt. And when I said that he was like Mayweather, he fought in a very defensive style like Mayweather. But watch Mayweather when he was a 35-pounder and a 30-pounder. He was a killer then. You know, he fought to knock you out. He fought to hurt you. So Canelo, what did I say the other day? Conor McGregor turned Mayweather into a Mexican fighter, and Golovkin turned Canelo into a Mayweather. You know, I don't believe that he can do that again and allow himself to be ridiculed by the fans in his own home country.
Did you watch the first fight numerous times? Did you see him?
No, I watched it twice. Once live and from the corner, and once on tape. That's all I needed to watch.
How did you score?
All right. After that, I just really wanted to address this after I saw that, and I'll just stop it right there. That's the point of the interview right there. I'll stop. Obviously, the guy asked a follow-up question, wasn't really pressing him regarding his first response because you have a lot of non-black reporters there, and that's one of the reasons why he felt comfortable saying what he said. But again, he's open. He is openly racist, and the fact that him and Oscar De La Hoya have one thing in common: they are both reject white supremacists. And I always had said that about Oscar De La Hoya, and this is before the comments or the racist emails that mainstream media does not ask Oscar De La Hoya regarding those emails, those racist emails from the Golden Boy Promotions camp talking about Al Heyman using the N-word, racial slurs, and comparing him to Adolf Hitler. Nobody presses him on that because of lack of journalism integrity and, of course, non-black media not asking him the right questions, But we know that this fight that's coming up, the rematch between Triple G and Canelo Alvarez, we know that we have two openly racist, reject white supremacists on both camps. You have the trainer for Gennady Golovkin, Abel Sanchez, who is a reject white supremacist, and then you have Oscar De La Hoya, who has been an openly racist, reject white supremacist since inception on Canelo Alvarez's side as a promoter for Golden Boy Promotions, and obviously Canelo is the cash cow for Golden Boy Promotions. There's so many things that's wrong with his comments. And let me backtrack for a second. Also. To illustrate why I call people like Abel Sanchez and Oscar De La Hoya reject white supremacists is because these guys want to be white, and people who classify themselves as Hispanic, they can check off their race as white, similar to Marco Rubio. You know, in his driver's license renewal form, Marco Rubio, who is Hispanic, classified himself as white in his driver's license renewal form. So obviously, you know, you're actually Hispanic. You can't be truly white. You can't be a white European, right? You can't be a white European identitarian because you don't have that DNA. You can't be pure white in that aspect, but they want to be white in that aspect, so they classify themselves in forms like a driver's license renewal form as white Hispanic. That's what I mean by reject white supremacists. These guys want to be white but can't truly be white, right? But going back to Abel Sanchez's ridiculous remarks, he's painting a picture that black fighters fight one particular style. Of course, we can go down in history, you know, and break down different fighters, et cetera, et cetera. We can do all that, right? But and that's the obvious thing to do. That is so obvious to break down that you can't paint any ethnicity, any race as to one fighting style. That's ridiculous. When he said those comments, he not only dissed black boxers, he dissed boxing fans. He dissed Mexicans, his own race. He doesn't realize what he said, because when you say that black boxers have one particular style, right? Black boxers have one particular style, and it's not pleasing to fans. You're basically saying that, again, you're saying that black boxers have one particular style, right? They're autonomous. They work in unison. Every fighter is the same if you're classified as black. Then you're saying that all fans are the same. All fans want one particular style of boxing, which is rock'em sock'em robots. They don't like technical fighters. They don't like slick fighters, right? They want to have a rock'em sock'em Friday night fights, you know, just over the top fisticuff type of, you know, match. Brainless boxing or brainless fighting. You know, that's what he's basically saying. And then he's saying that he had to deploy quote unquote Mexican style for his former fighter Terry Norris back in the day, as if quote unquote Mexican style is a superior style, right, to train his boxers. He deployed the Mexican style to Triple G, right? But most recently, you know, his most recent fights, his last fight with Canelo Alvarez, there was no Mexican style. He was boxing. Right? And so on and so forth, right? Even before that, you had boxers, or actually matches, that Triple G had against superior competition, and Triple G couldn't knock them out, couldn't do anything about it. Just basically, you know, did not deploy Mexican style. You know, Danny Jacobs, for example, right? Before the Canelo Alvarez fight. But the point being is that he's preaching about Mexican style, and he's basically setting up fans and setting up this particular fight or rematch to say that Canelo Alvarez needs to step up and stay in front of him and fight, and not quote unquote run, right? And shout out to, I saw Boxing Eagle's video. He had a very good point regarding this response as well. I mean, you know, if you're complaining about Canelo Alvarez's style and that he quote unquote runs, you need to conform to his style, no matter what kind of style he brings you. You know, it's kind of like, you know, you're in a heavyweight boxing match, a heavyweight fight, and you're telling the other fighter to stop hitting you so hard. That's ridiculous, right? You're not going to tell him to stop hitting you so hard. You know, you have to conform and to any style. That's what Floyd Mayweather was able to do. He was able to conform and adapt to any style. So you not only you diss, you know, black fighters, boxing fans, right, and Mexicans. Not only did you diss all of them, right, but you dissed your own boxer, because you're basically saying that Canelo Alvarez needs to fight toe to toe in order for your boxer, Triple G, to be successful. Instead of saying, well, we can adapt to any style. And no matter what style, you know, Canelo Alvarez brings, if he quote unquote runs, we're going to cut off the ring. If he wants to fight toe to toe, if he wants to fight on the inside, we'll go ahead and bang out with him. If he wants to fight on the outside, you know, we'll control the distance, control the range. He's not saying that. He's basically saying he needs to fight. Canelo Alvarez needs to fight toe to toe. And if he boxes, it's going to be boring like Floyd Mayweather. And he's doing Floyd Mayweather's name as an example. Right? And here's the thing about that. You know, here's the thing about that. Again, he's saying that black fighters have a style that's not pleasing to fans. Again, painting a broad stroke of black fighters, fans, quote unquote Mexican style, and your own fighter. You're saying your own fighter can't adapt to a quote unquote running style of Canelo Alvarez, right? Which is, of course, ridiculous. But I want to play a clip, and shout out to Dante's Boxing Nation. I want to play some clips here to illustrate a point, right? If black fighters have a style that's not pleasing to fans, right, then here's a great response here from a young upcoming boxer, actually quite a few. Dante's Boxing Nation interview some up-and-coming boxing prospects in a gym, I believe in California. I'm not exactly sure where it was. And here's their response to Dante asking these young up-and-coming fighters, and these guys are really young. These guys are teenagers. Asking them who are their favorite boxers currently. I'll play the clip, and I'll come back with my commentary.
Who's some of your favorite fighters? Keith Thurman? Nice.
Okay, so he just said, this is a young upcoming fighter. He just said that Keith Thurman is his favorite boxer. Okay? Keith Thurman does not have a quote unquote Mexican style. Okay? Keith Thurman is pretty much the opposite of Mexican style, especially his last 3 or 4 fights. He's similar to Triple G because before stepping up in competition, and same thing with Triple G, Keith Thurman was stopping guys. He was knocking them out, right? But when he stepped up in competition, when he's fighting guys in his own division, like the Sean Porters of the world, right? The Danny Garcias of the world, he would outbox them. Use lateral movement, jab, and not engage in certain situations, right? That's the opposite of Mexican style. But yeah, this upcoming prospect, who's also a fan, says that Keith Thurman is his favorite fighter, right? So that basically, and this is obviously this is a small example, very small example, but it's obvious that when you paint a broad stroke of fans and saying that they only like one particular style, right? They only want to see rock'em sock'em back and forth type of fights. And Again, I could have broke down, you could bring up names like Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, okay, Luis Ortiz. I mean, there's so many people. Errol Spence, who I'm going to get to in a minute. People in your own division who want to fight your fighter, Triple G, as in Jermell Charlo, the #1 mandatory, who is knocking out cats left and right, who has a style that's pleasing to the eye, but yet he's still very underrated. You don't want to fight this guy. No, it's high risk, low reward. You want to cash out. Triple G is 36, 35, 36. The latter years of his career, and wants to cash out and do a trilogy with Canelo Alvarez. So, I'm just for this upcoming fight with the rematch, I'm leaning towards Canelo Alvarez to win. And I think he'll separate. I believe the separation in terms of who is a better overall fighter, you'll see this in the rematch. And I think Canelo will win more convincingly in this rematch. But I think they're just basically trying to cash out and set up a trilogy for this fight. That's what I think. But going back to his comments, again, you paint a broad stroke with these incendiary racist comments and say, and they're honest, of course. It's coming from Abel Sanchez. He's in his element. You paint a broad stroke and say black fighters have a style that's not pleasing to fans, when, of course, you can't say that to any particular ethnicity or race of any fighting style. This, again, going back to this upcoming boxing prospect / fan, right? He said Keith Thurman is his favorite fighter. He could have said Mikey Garcia. He could have said Lomachenko. He could have said anybody. He said Keith Thurman is his favorite fighter. And Keith Thurman obviously has not been showcasing any knockouts, any quote-unquote Mexican style, his most recent fights. This guy has an upcoming tune-up fight. Now, and Keith Thurman, I'm going to get on to you in a minute. Actually, right now. If Keith Thurman has a tune-up fight, if you don't knock this guy out, because he said he's not going to fight anybody in the top 10, Keith Thurman has to knock this no-name dude out, whoever he picks. Because if he doesn't, his stock is going to drop convincingly. So Keith Thurman's next fight, whoever he fights, is going to be some no-name dude that's unranked. You have to stop him. Got to knock this guy out. Point blank and simple. For a guy, his most recent fights that hasn't been just, displaying his power, his knockout ratio. He's been just outboxing cats, like I said, with Sean Porter and Danny Garcia. When these guys step up in competition, their knockout ratio drops. Same thing with Triple G. The harder the competition, what they were known for before, right, it continues to decrease in value as far as knockouts. Right? But again, with Keith Thurman, his next fight, he better knock this guy out. There's no excuses. Now, I don't expect you to win. I expect you to stop the next guy, because he's a no-name. And this tune-up, he's supposed to make you look good. All right? But going back to Abel Sanchez, again, this upcoming boxing prospect / fan interview by Dante's Boxing Nation. And there's some other clips in this video as well that were really good that I wanted to play. I just forgot the timestamps. These two other fighters, I believe they're all siblings. They mentioned that their favorite fighters were Errol Spence. They mentioned Errol Spence. They mentioned Keith Thurman. Errol Spence, he has a style that's pleasing to fans. He has a style that's pleasing to most boxing fans, I should say. To most boxing fans. Because he knocks guys out. He stops them. He wants to hit his competition with bad intentions. That's what Errol Spence is doing, and that's why he's highly avoided. Right? But you paint a broad stroke of black fighters and say they have a style that's not pleasing to the eye. When, of course, Errol Spence, there's one example, has a style that's pleasing because he's knocking guys out left and right. Right? So this was a good, I like the fact that I will shout out Fight Hype for asking this question and bringing out this answer from Abel Sanchez. And again, this shows you the openly racist ideology that boxing has with the Abel Sanchez's and the Oscar De La Hoyas of the world. I'm going to watch this fight, the rematch on May 5th. And I'm leaning towards Canelo Alvarez. But again, we have two openly racist, reject white supremacists in Abel Sanchez and Oscar De La Hoya that are part of this event. Right? And if you're screaming about Abel Sanchez is complaining about, Canelo Alvarez left the fight as Mayweather, well, then you need to beat Mayweather. You got to conform to any style. You got to adapt, you got to adjust, and be ready for any style. So if he quote-unquote runs, cut off the ring. If he wants to stay on the inside, learn to adapt, learn to counter. If he wants to fight from a distance, close off the distance. Do what you got to do. You got to learn to, you got to learn to adapt to any style. You can't complain about a style that is quote unquote not pleasing to the eye and, your opponent made it boring. No, you need to go ahead and conform and show that you can conform to any and adjust to any style, no matter what he brings, no matter what Canelo Alvarez brings. All right. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the comments by Abel Sanchez. Leave your comments down below about what he said. Do you think he's right? Do black fighters have a quote-unquote style that's not pleasing to fans? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below, family. Until next time, Chauncey, a.k.a. the Black Separatist, signing out. Peace.